Hello, my name is Ellen Egan, and I work with the WHO Emergencies Program in Communications. Today we're going to talk about guidelines for communications and media interventions. By the end of this module, you should be able to describe why effective communications is essential in emergency response and list key policies and practices for communicating for WHO. You can describe how additional support for communications can be accessed. Why do we communicate in an outbreak? Communications is an integral part of public health response, and it's critical that we communicate with our stakeholders. For example, the general public. People have the right to be informed about risks and how to protect themselves. Communications can help influence behavior change. For example, hand washing. It's also essential to identify and correct misinformation and address rumors early and quickly. Other stakeholders, like decision makers, WHO needs to provide information to advocate for best practices and public policy. For donors and partners, WHO communicates about the needs to support the health emergency response. Remember, all partners and stakeholders want to know about the event and what WHO is doing. Effective communications is critical to any public health emergency. Every single public health intervention during a public health emergency will either succeed or fail based on the way we communicate. There are many different channels of communication. For example, the media, newspapers, radio, TV, and other forms of media. We also communicate through text messaging, the web, and through social media. People also get information through posters, handouts, flyers, other information, education, and communication material. We also communicate through direct intervention with influencers in the community and direct community engagement. This session, however, will only cover working with the media. It's very important that we work with the media because it's the quickest way to get information out during emergencies. Because it's effective, fast, and a transparent method of communication, it's an effective public health tool as well. It's important for building trust because we're able to reach the stakeholders in an effective and in an engaging way. We found that radio, TV, and text messages have been shown to be the 3 top methods for getting information to public during outbreaks. So who can be a WHO spokesperson? All personnel deployed by WHO can communicate in their area of expertise. However, remember that you need to obtain advice from the communications focal point and get approval from the team leader before dealing with the media. So the role of spokespersons. Spokespersons communicate information that the public wants and needs to prevent and reduce illness, injury, or death. It also helps to build trust and credibility. And it builds support for the public health response. Good spokespeople are able to communicate well and tell their stories in a compelling way. They communicate credibly and preserve a good reputation for WHO. They're able to relate to different audiences, and as they communicate, they're able to engage stakeholders, and they interact with the media. Remember that reporters today often write for more than one media. They work with the print media, with radio, TV, and on the web. So they're on a 24/7 production cycle, and as all of us, they're bombarded with information, with releases, advisories, statements. And often these information pieces contain little news. So what reporters want, they want numbers. They want numbers and numbers. They need current and reliable numbers. They want to know what's new, what's unexpected, what's surprising, what's against the trend. They want to have their calls answered promptly. And they want to speak with a spokesperson that can get to the point. So what are some of the guidelines for dealing with the media? In general, WHO technical staff may speak with the media on subjects in their area of technical expertise. Staff should bear in mind that they speak for WHO and not as an individual or as an academic or an independent expert. They represent WHO. Staff should be sure to inform the communications focal point and ensure that they have clearance to speak. They should only speak based on their technical expertise and seek advice from their supervisor and the communications officer. Remember that remarks made to journalists might be important to colleagues elsewhere in the organization, so you need to keep colleagues informed about work with the media. So a few reminders to help in your role as a spokesperson. First of all, make sure that you clarify your role in communications. So are you going to be involved in producing sit-reps and reports? Are you involved in partner engagements? You need to be officially appointed by the WR when you are deployed in communications. You need to establish and communicate a clearance process and a deadline from the beginning. Make sure you have an agreed distribution list for your communications material and an agreed level of sensitivity. You need to respect confidentiality of information. And for photos, make sure you have consent of the people that you're photographing. Provide captions and credits for your photos. In terms of logos, make sure that you get clearance on logo use for partners as it's needed. In terms of ethics in working with photos, video, and audio, photographs, videos, and audios taken should respect human dignity and ensure the rights, safety, and well-being of the person or people being portrayed. WHO material should always be used with compassion, and efforts should be made to ensure that the use does not place the person in undue risk. Content representing issues that are culturally, politically sensitive, or could be stigmatizing to the person being photographed must keep the privacy and confidentiality of individuals in mind. Photographs and other materials portraying people with special needs are to be taken with particular care, compassion, and the protection of privacy. All efforts should be made to cover children in an age-appropriate manner and culturally sensitive manner. Please note that the photos and videos and audios taken while you're deployed by WHO are the property of WHO. This is a good thing because it means that they could get used widely. Ensure that the communications focal point receives your material so that they can be used. How do we do informed consent? Firstly, you could get a written consent. There is a written consent form that will be available for you, and you can have the person that you are working with, either in audio or video, sign that consent form. You can also use oral consent instead of written consent if there's a risk of infection, such as during an Ebola outbreak. You could also take a video of someone giving their consent. WHO will only use an image for public health communications and to draw attention and support to an emergency. It will never be used for profit-making reasons. And all photos and videos are credited with the name of the person taking the image, but the copyright remains with WHO. For social listening, when we're working with the media, Not only do we give information, we also gather information. This is where social listening comes in. Social listening is when we are able to assess people's thoughts and feelings about a topic by gathering information such as media analysis or social media analysis. And it helps us to understand the hearts, minds, and behavior. So how do people feel about a particular topic? What sorts of concerns might they have? And what sorts of behaviors are associated with the topic? For the social media policy, WHO users may distribute through social media channels the materials produced as part of their official duties. However, these materials remain the property of the organization and shouldn't be posted before they are posted by the organization in an official way. WHO copyrighted images should be used within their original intended context and not be manipulated or changed. Also for the social media policy, WHO spokespeople should use technically approved corporate messages or retweet messages from the official WHO accounts when engaging about ongoing emergencies on their individual social media accounts. WHO personnel should not use on social media any information that may put WHO operations or staff at risk. A very important message for everyone being deployed: work closely with the communications officer on the ground. Your personal social media engagement while you're in the field, remember that you're responsible for your actions and what you post on social media. In posting photos, updates, or comments, think that CNN, your mother, or your boss might be seeing these posts. And consider the reputation of WHO, the organization that you're representing. Now take a moment and think about, what do you remember from this session? Write down the points that you found to be most important and that you want to remember. Thank you.